I reached out to over 100 women in rock and metal and asked one simple question. What's one thing you wish more people understood or knew about women in rock and metal? The responses that I received were thoughtful, honest, and perfectly encapsulated why I started Valkyrie Sessions in the first place. Hello, all my beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Valkyrie Sessions. If you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, we're happy to have you join us again this week. Got a lot more great things to talk about. Crazy, we're already 5 episodes in here. Again, big thank you to everybody who's tuned in on all the platforms. Big thanks to everybody who's been keeping posted with everything going on the Valkyrie Fest Instagram page. I know we'll be having some new stuff coming out over this next week. We got a couple posts planned, and actually right now working on getting a TikTok going too. So some exciting developments that I'm sure I'll have a lot more to announce and go over in the next week. But no, I just want to give a big thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. Really appreciate it. And yeah, as you can tell, we have a little new decoration here. Obviously I'm a Sleep Token fan, as you can tell by my shirt too. This if it looks like a car air freshener, it's because it outlived its life. So now I'm trying to do something else with it since it wasn't super cheap. So tell me what you think about this, if you like this decoration right here or not. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the show. Got a lot of fun things to talk about this week. I know last week kind of started off on more of like a somber tone. This week, I think we got a lot of exciting things all the way through, which is great. I don't have the This Week in Metal or History segment. That'll be something I might do once every couple weeks, maybe once every month. But instead, I have a lot of fun things to talk about. Starting off with Nene Royal. If that name does not ring a bell, what might ring a bell is if anybody out there watches America's Got Talent and you happen to have seen a girl who's 15 years old now, 16, performing the Cranberries Zombie on America's Got Talent. She did such a fantastic job. And so I wanted to talk about this a little bit, and then I wanted to highlight a couple of other things that she does with music. I'm going to share my screen in a little bit here and show you a couple of shorts of her doing some other songs. But let's go ahead and bring up the story here. This is from Loudwire. Again, this was roughly about 3-ish weeks ago or so. Viewers catching America's Got Talent were for the ultimate surprise when they were treated to just turning 16-year-old Thailand native Nene Royal, who traveled to the United States to showcase her emerging musical talents on the stage. The young musician offered a wholesome backstory of traveling from Phuket, Thailand, with her father on hand for support. She stated, "I started playing guitar since I was 7, and my biggest dreams is that I really want to be a superstar on tour." She nervously told the judging panel, confirming that America's Got Talent was the biggest stage she had performed on. What the audience got was not a pop ballad or some vocal gymnastics, but rather a gritty, fully rocked up version of the Cranberries' 1994 smash hit, Zombie. Setting the tone with a roaring guitar slide to open and nimble-fingered playing, Nene then unleashed a blood-curdling growl before pulling back into the core of the alt-rock smash after some requisite headbanging. Royal displayed a stage presence well beyond years, commanding the audience and some of the judges to sing along with the zombie chorus. Her voice, able to handle Dolores O'Riordan's range from more melodic and tender to forceful with a bit of growl, hit perfectly with the crowd and even yielded a few stunned looks. Finishing out the audition with a blistering guitar lick and one more impressive growl, she earned a huge ovation from the crowd. So what did the judges say? With the room still buzzing, the judges delivered their responses to the performance they just saw. Sofia Vergara said, "That was spectacular. You have a really good chance to do very good in this competition." Howie Mandel stated, "You are such a surprise with the energy and the rock and roll. You are a rock star young lady, you really are." Mel B shared, "You've got really good vocal control and you can kill it on the guitar. You're like a match made in heaven. You're brilliant." And finally, Simon Cowell offered, "The tone of your voice is like really authentic. Even the fact that it was all a bit messy made the audition for me really good." She received 4 yes votes to advance in the competition. Royal reverted back to her normal self, kind of shyly acknowledging the crowd as she exited the stage. So a little bit more about Nene, I actually have her page pulled up here. So she's a guitarist, vocalist, and songwriter from Phuket, Thailand, who gained international recognition through her appearance on season 21 of America's Got Talent. A featured artist with Enya Music, she combines expressive guitar playing, powerful vocals, and influences from modern rock, alternative pop, and melodic metal. Now focused on original music, Nene is preparing her debut EP as she continues to establish herself as one of Asia's most exciting emerging rock artists. She's got her own page, NeneRoyal.com. She has some merch on there, so go check that out if you liked what you heard, or if you decide to discover her. Hopefully, maybe some discovery from this podcast too. And with that being said, let me go ahead and show you a couple shorts that of her playing some other songs here on YouTube. All right, so let's go ahead and show you a couple of these clips here. First off, this is Bulls on Parade by Rage Against the Machine. Just watch her play. I mean, she can shred.
But the earth gets bigger, the triggers go into your palm. Running around the family, with a pocket full of shell. Running around the family, with a pocket full of shell. Running around the family, with a pocket full of shell. Running around the family, with a pocket full of shell. Weapons not food.
Pretty dang cool right there. Let's go ahead and show you the next one, which is Master of Puppets. Effortless. I think Kirk would be pretty proud of that. That's incredible. So yeah, great stuff there for sure. I had to highlight this girl. Just incredible stuff, and it's great to see so much young talent out there nowadays. But I mean, especially 15, 16 years old, and she's already killing it. I hope she goes far in the competition. I don't watch a lot of like reality TV or those kind of shows, but I do try to keep up from time to time with America's Got Talent, and I will definitely be keeping up, seeing how this girl does in the competition. She better make it far. She has all the potential to make it far. I'll tell you that. So, great stuff there. Had to highlight that to start things off. Secondly, let's go ahead and transition now into something a little more serious and kind of more news, a little bit more news within the past week or so, and that is Spiritbox singer Courtney LaPlante kicking out a fan from the mosh pit at one of their recent shows. So let me go ahead and talk about this article here in Loudwire. Courtney LaPlante had a violent fan thrown out of Spiritbox show last week and refused to continue the performance until they were gone. Spiritbox are currently on the road with Nova Twins supporting Evanescence. During their July 15 show in Phoenix, Arizona, a fan was allegedly hurting people in the crowd and had to be removed from the scene. Footage of the incident didn't surface until earlier this week. LaPlante stopped the performance towards the end of the set right before playing their final song, Soft Spine, to address fuckery in the crowd that was pointed out by their drummer, Zev Rose. Though it's unclear what the person was doing, the singer told the audience that the show wasn't going to continue until they knew everyone was safe. She stated, "So I need you guys to be tattletales. Who's the fucking freak that's hurting everybody? Point them out." And that prompted a bunch of fingers to go up in the air and point at the alleged perpetrator. And then she stated, "Well, guess what, fucker? We all saw you. We know where you are, and your ass is going to get kicked the fuck out," she asserted. The vocalist then squatted down on the stage and spoke directly to one fan in the audience who was seemingly a victim of the violent person's antics. She asked if they were okay and apologized for bringing attention to them. She then stated, "This isn't the damn gold medal karate match, okay? This is a rock and roll show." She stated that before suggesting the crowd learn a lesson from the individual that she ended up having escorted out by security. So I'm not going to pull up the footage of that, but what I do think is important bringing this up is just talking about, like, again, mosh pit etiquette and rules in general, because it sounds like a person was they were probably, violently swinging their legs around or swinging their fists around and whatnot, not caring for everybody else around them. And, I think that for some that aren't metal fans, when they think of a mosh pit, they just think, violence or, smacking into people and whatnot, which, like, that's okay, like there's some of that that's partially true, but there's a lot more to it than that, and there's a lot more nuance there. And the problem is when we allow fans like this person that kind of get pointed at as like, oh, this is everybody. That's not true because there's a lot of people that are truly caring in this genre. In fact, any mosh pit I've ever been to, almost everyone there is caring and respects people for what they want. So I'm just going to tell you some of my what I believe some of my rules should be would be and what the rules should be when it comes to mosh pits. Firstly, the golden rule: if someone falls, pick them up. I mean, that's something I think everybody should know. Everybody mostly does know. Somebody falls, you build a little border around them until they're good to go, and they get back up. If they're injured, you stop the mosh pit for a bit. You leave an exit open for them to get out, so that security or medical or whoever's on staff can help them. Secondly, if someone doesn't want to be involved in the mosh pit, don't push them in. Whether it's somebody who already was in the mosh pit that's trying to find a way out and then they get pushed back in, not cool. Whether it's somebody that wasn't involved at all and 2 rows behind them, they're pushing the people to get them in, also not cool because then they could get blindsided and really messed up. Third, here's another bit of mosh pit etiquette. If you're making your way through a packed crowd yelling pit, pit, so people let you through, actually go to the pit. I know that this is one that some people may disagree with, but like, if you're a festival and there's 20,000 people there that are listening to a headliner, and the line basically in terms of how packed the crowd is goes all the way back behind like the speakers, like 100 yards behind, and the pit's like 10 20 yards behind the stage, and you're basically trying to get in front of all those people and you're saying pit pit to try to get up there. Go in. Like, don't inconvenience all the other people that have been waiting for that band to come up or have gotten their spot. It's not fair. So if you actually are going to go to the pit, go to the pit. Don't use it as an excuse to snake your way closer to the stage and then just stop. So that to me, that's just a courtesy thing. And I think that we've all seen that person or those people that squeeze past 30 people yelling pit, pit. And then they get there, plant their feet, and they're just not interested in the pit anymore, So that's another one I thought that was important. And then fourth, and this goes with the story here with Spiritbox, don't be overly aggressive, i.e. don't carelessly swing your fists, elbows, kick your feet everywhere. Again, just have some common courtesy and care for the people around you. Also, make sure you help out any crowd surfers that are there. And then if people are calling for a wall of death, help make it too and get it out of circle form. I mean, hey, that's a cool thing every now and then, right? So I don't know. I think a lot of these things are kind of feel like they should be common knowledge and common courtesy, but there are always a few bad apples that kind of ruin everybody else who's trying to be good people. So that's just something I felt that was worthy of talking about there. So that's going to take care of that. And then transitioning out of the concert with Spiritbox, let's go ahead and get into our festival topic for the week. I want to talk about, we've talked about dates and potential prices, talked about potential lineups, talked about potential locations for, Valkyrie Fest, when it becomes a thing. But I kind of want to dive a little deeper into how not to run a rock or metal festival. And I think a perfect example of that is Blue Ridge Rock Festival. So I'll talk a little bit about this. So I don't know if it lasted any longer than 2023. I know that they ended up facing a ton of lawsuits. I also would recommend after you listen to this, go watch Tank the Tech's video he did on this back in late 2023, early 2024. Blue Ridge, I know, were the defendants in at least 4 lawsuits that included unpaid wages, unpaid vendors failing to pay for equipment, breach of contract, etc. The truth is this festival was a complete shit show. A big part of that was due to how cheap the people were that ran it, pure mismanagement, etc. In 2023, for example, there were 60,000 daily attendees. Virginia International Raceway in Alton, Virginia had a max capacity of 50,000. This was run by Purpose-Driven Events. We go up ahead and pull up a couple articles here. I'm going to go year by year. Let's go ahead and start off with 2021 because there were issues 21, 22, and 23. So here's an article in Loudwire from the 2021 festival. Festival goers have slammed the chaos unfolding at Blue Ridge Rock Festival in Virginia via social media. The event, which is hosting the likes of Five Finger Death Punch, Shinedown, and Rob Zombie in its inaugural event in Virginia, has reportedly been beset with logistical challenges, with hours-long traffic queues and insufficient camping facilities among the chief concerns of attendees and locals alike. A Facebook group, Screwed by Blue Ridge Rock Festival, has been launched in response to the festival's issues, attracting thousands of members. The group's description reads, "The event has been wrought with ineptitude and failure. Ticketing was a nightmare, camping was oversold, leaving prospective attendees without the accommodations that they paid for. Parking was disorganized and inefficient, leaving attendees in long lines for unacceptable durations." In this local news report, one festival goer describes the chaos of getting into Blue Ridge Rock Festival, while another interviewee who works in the area claims local businesses are losing money as a result of the issues. JT Turner told 10 News in Roanoke, Virginia, "It's just cars piled on cars. A lot of wait hours. You heard people saying they waited for 6 hours, 4 hours, but overall, as the day kept going by, it got better." So that gives you an idea, parking issues, queue issues, things being overbooked. That's 2021. So we already have that as we kind of now transition and go into 2022. So this is an article from Rival Magazine. What went wrong at Blue Ridge Rock Festival 2022? If only I had known then what I know now, and that's that the Blue Ridge Rock Festival is an unorganized conglomerate of deceitful practices, ineptitude, and an overall disregard for the safety and health of their employees, freelancers, vendors, and attendees. It started with ticketing issues, followed by long, and I mean long, 3 to 4 hour wait times for shuttles to and from the festival, with many fans disappointed and frustrated. Many were not willing to return the next day due to this alone, and I can't say I blame them. Shuttle services were reported to have improved by Saturday, day 3 of 4, but still had fans seeing 1.5 to 2 hour wait times to their cars. ADA was a complete joke, with vendors, friends, and family pushing wheelchairs up and down a very steep hill that festival goers coined as the Hill, or the Kate Bush Hill. The inaccessibility forced many ticket holders to miss out on bands they paid to see due to the steep terrain. One fan shared the experience when asking for assistance. Quote, "I tried speaking with someone about ADA there, and the response I received was, if someone is that handicapped to the point they can't get around with aids, then they probably shouldn't be at a rock concert." Probably not a good thing to say there. Reddit user Sertorius quoted, "I walk with a cane and it was really difficult for me. The hill was my biggest challenge, and so was the lack of promised water refill stations." I'll get into that in a little bit too, by the way. Sertorius continued, "I opted out of seeing certain bands to avoid hiking up and down the hill, and it left me feeling very frustrated." While shuttle services were already a known nightmare, those with any type of disability that required ADA transport were met with additional adverse conditions. One attendee noted, "There's no lighting near the field that you must cross to get to the shuttles. I hit a hole that I couldn't see and flipped my mobility scooter." So again, I mean, this continues to trash piled up upon trash here as well. There were also some absence of hand washing stations, porta potties overflowing as well. So I'm not going to read everything, but that just gives you an idea of some of the biggest issues there in 2022. And now that leads us into 2023. I mentioned about water refill stations. Well, this is an article once again in Loudwire. Blue Ridge Rock Fest investigated by the health department for an illness outbreak. Now, 3 years after the ill-fated 2023 edition of Blue Ridge Rock Fest, there continues to be issues related to the event, with attendees of the festival reporting that they had experienced gastrointestinal issues following the abbreviated music weekend. As a result, the Virginia Department of Health has launched an investigation. In a report from a local station, WFXR-TV, festival goer Andy Pettit revealed that he had experienced nausea and diarrhea following his attendance at the festival, while noting, quote, "I'm 172 pounds right now, which is 13 pounds less than I was at the age of 13. He says that he and three friends all drank from water stations, and all three had allegedly fallen ill afterward. Quote, The symptoms were all relatively the same. He revealed that he was tested for parasites and received a prescription for parasitic infection. While his doctor stated that he felt he may have been exposed to Giardia, his tests were negative by the time he sought care. The article continues, still unsure what the actual diagnosis is, so it's a little concerning, but I was cleared to return to work, he said. Yesterday or last night actually was the first time I was cleared to return to work since the festival. As stated, the Virginia Department of Health has launched an investigation. A survey was constructed for attendees that asked whether or not they had filled water bottles at the festival, used hand washing stations, or ate vendor food. It also asked whether or not any of the attendees went in or near the local Dan River. So it continues, and they talk about that a little bit more, and then Blue Ridge continues to make a statement saying that the weather was the cause for cancellation and whatnot. Even though there were a lot of other logistical concerns too. But that the weather was actually not the cause of it. There was a TikTok video published on September 13th of 2023 by Chris Michaels, the meteorologist for Southwest Virginia's WSLS. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's that weatherman that does all those metal videos and implements metal lyrics into his forecast or his coverage or whatnot, which is really cool. He stated, I reached out to the National Weather Service. They said they do not suggest canceling events. That's just not something they do, but they did send briefings to emergency management. He also reviewed archive radar data from September 9th and 10th surrounding the festival site, noting that little to no rain was in the Saturday forecast and only scattered showers were expected on Sunday. So basically, there, as I'm getting into with this, just plenty of logistical problems and plenty of just complete ineptitude when it came to certain things. I didn't even get into it with the 2022 article, but there was also a media tent there, and it was like a few tables set up with some of those crappy chairs or whatnot, just like folding tables, and it was on the grass, not even like in the back. It was just out there in the open, where I'm sure it's still really loud and people are walking around and whatnot. And then they had like a cooler of water there, but when media, whether they're photographers or others that are by the stage, they weren't able to grab waters over there. They were told they had to go back to the media tent to grab waters. As a person who has been involved with media, that'd be very frustrating. The other thing they mentioned too, there was nowhere near enough security because there were volunteer groups that had to be set up to take crowd surfers to help them out because there was barely any security that was by the railing or by where people were coming over. So plenty of issues with that, and essentially my big thing is for lessons to learn with that. If you're going to run a festival, be responsible that you don't exceed capacity, you don't cut corners, you respect your fans, workers, and artists. The happier the artists are, the happier the fans will be, and the happier the workers will be, and the more likely they will be to come back. Not everything has to be about maximizing profit. Coming out of the black is obviously important, but this is supposed to be a celebration of these artists, and a lot of this stuff is just purely inexcusable, parasites in drinking water, no ADA accommodations, choosing a venue or putting a stage where it's hard for people to get there, completely unnecessary, overflowing of trash cans, porta potties, not enough security, lack of parking. I mean, if you're going to have a festival, it requires a ton of prep for sure, and you have to factor in for numerous things. But more importantly, you have to understand it costs money and that this isn't just for the artists. You can't be cheap. Even if you're operating at a loss for a festival year one, having an unforgettable experience for fans is important because that's going to make people come back and make the city or area happy that something like this will come each year, can help out the local economy, and then you can learn from that and make it more profitable going forward. But you can't cut costs, you can't cut corners and expect things to go swimmingly. So I think that's just a very important thing to mention there for any festival that you plan, for any genre. But I think Blue Ridge is a perfect example of how not to do it and the lessons to learn going forward for anybody that does plan on setting up one. With that being said, let's go ahead and turn to a topic, a new segment on the show that I'm really excited to talk about, which is Valkyrie Voices. So what this is I'm not going to do it every week, but I'm going to reach out to women in rock and metal. I'm going to reach out to, I'm sure, some media in rock and metal, whether that's photographers, people that, speak about stuff online on YouTube, or journalists out there. And I'm going to ask a question. I'll probably do this once a month. And I want to get, some responses and see what people have to say. And I think that, we can feature it out here on this podcast. So the main reason I came up, with the idea of Valkyrie Fest is, these incredible women in, heavy music. And I thought it'd be really useful to reach out and get their thoughts on something. So roughly about 2 weeks ago, I reached out to over 100 women musicians in rock and metal. I think it was about 110 or so. And I asked one simple, important question. What's one thing you wish more people understood or knew about women in rock and metal? I'm sure I'll get more replies. I've sent some emails out as well. So if I do get any other replies in the next week, this is something, I'll continue to post each week, just what people have to say. Might eventually get some video responses as well. Who knows? But these are the responses I've received so far. I have 3 of them. Firstly, Lena Scissorhands of Infected Rain. She wrote back, quote, "I hope we can all look beyond gender and the label society puts on us. Metal has always been a place of unity, belonging, and acceptance, no matter where you come from, how old you are, or who you are. At the end of the day, music is art, and that's what matters most. And what matters is whether it moves you, not the gender of the person who created it." I think this is a fantastic response. It shows how loving, accepting, and inviting metal truly is. It reminds us why so many people fall in love with metal in the first place. This scene has always attracted people who felt like outsiders, I feel, in one way or another. Whether it's your background, your age, where you're from, or anything else, none of that is supposed to matter once the music starts. What matters is whether the music connects with you. I think that's a really healthy perspective. And the reason I started this podcast isn't because I think, women should be treated differently. It's because I think there are a lot of incredible artists out there who deserve to be discovered that might not have enough attention. And I think Valkyrie Fest and this is a way to maybe get them some attention or get them some spotlight. Once people discover them, the music should speak for itself. Totally agree with that. After that, I then got a reply from Zoe Marie Federoff, the vocalist of Catalyst Crime. She stated, quote, "The same thing I wish more people understood about women in general. We are not a commodity, a product that exists solely for the benefit of others. We are autonomous human beings born to pursue actualization and self-fulfillment." Again, phenomenal reply here, and I think Zoe makes a really important point. Sometimes conversations about women in music become so focused on, just their appearance or their image that we forget, these are artists, they're performers, they're professionals. They're creating music because they're passionate about it, not because they exist to fit other expectations. So I think a really good response there too. And then finally, I got an answer back from Brittney Slays of Unleash the Archers, who mentioned, quote, "I would have to say there is nothing special or different about being a woman in the metal scene. We are just women who love heavy metal. That's it. We don't want to be treated differently or revered in any way. We just love singing and performing and being involved in heavy music because that is who we are. I truly believe you are born a metalhead. You can't teach it or change it or escape it. I would love it if metal musicians were never defined by their sex, but instead by their love of the music and their dedication to it." And I think this is great too. I especially love when she says, we're all born metalheads. I think that from an early age, whatever music that you kind of discover that, your parents or, society you kind of hear around is ultimately going to obviously shape who you're going to be a little bit and shape your music taste. But yeah, I think in a way that, yeah, you kind of are born a certain way like that, right? And it's really interesting because this almost brings us full circle from Lena's response. She's basically saying we're metal musicians. That's the identity we're most proud of. Yes, they're women in metal, but before anything else, they're musicians who happen to love this kind of music. And what's really fascinating is all 3 artists here came at this question from different angles, but they kind of arrived at a similar conclusion. They're not asking for special treatment. They're just asking to be respected as musicians, artists, and people. I think that's a message all of us in the rock and metal community can and should get behind. And again, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to create Valkyrie Fest, Valkyrie Sessions is that, there are still a lot of fans who just simply have not been exposed to many of these bands. And my hope is that, when people listen to these bands, they don't listen solely just because they're women. They listen listen because they're great bands. Obviously, there's great males that, are doing incredible things, as guitarists or drummers in them as well. Some that are singers, and then women who, are drummers and guitarists themselves. And if discovering, those artists through this show helps someone find their next favorite artist, then I've accomplished what I've set out to do. So, really great stuff here, and something I wanted to bring out on the show. And I look forward to hopefully doing more in the future if I get some more responses. So, big thank you again to Lena, Zoe, and Brittney. I appreciate it, and keep rocking and being amazing at what you guys do. And with that being said, that's going to lead us perfectly into our album review of the week. So I think I mentioned this last week on the show that we're going to be reviewing Duel by Jinjer. I got a chance to see them live a little more than a couple weeks ago. And I wanted to talk about their most recent album. Again, I'll be reviewing new albums along with some that have been released in the past, roughly 18 months that are, most recent for some big groups out there. This album was released on February 7th, 2025. So yeah, I wanted to talk about how they sound on record since I just talked about how they sounded live. Firstly, for those who don't know, Jinjer is a Ukrainian metalcore band that began back in 2008. In 2009, vocalist Tatiana Shmyluk joined the band along with current guitarist Roman Ibram Kalilov. Ibram Kalilov. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. In 2011, bassist Eugene Abdukhanov, hope I got that right as well, joined, and then in 2016 they got a new drummer, Vladi Ulasevich, and that makes up the group. Prior to this album, they have released 5 other albums, including Inhale, Do Not Breathe in 2012, Cloud Factory in 2014, King of Everything, which I think that really kind of put them on the map, and that was in 2016, Macro in 2019, Wallflowers in 2021, and then now Duel. They have 567,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, 686,000 on YouTube Music. Talking about Tati a little bit, I mean, she really has everything, from incredible clean highs to the absolute filthiest of gutturals and screams. She's actually the person I credit the most for getting me into metalcore and becoming a fan of screaming in general. 3-4 years ago, I listened to some of that music, and now I have friends who listen to all kinds of different genres, but especially in rock and metal, they listen to some different stuff too. Some that are classic rock fans, some that are older metal fans with like Metallica or Megadeth stuff in the 80s and 90s and whatnot. And then I have some people who are fans of modern day stuff. And for the longest time, I could never really get into screaming, and I think the biggest thing was, I can't, it's frustrating because I really can't understand what they say. As I really do try to do the best I can to dive into, what maybe they're trying to convey through their music. I don't have all the answers, but I do the best I can with that. And not being able to understand what they're saying is kind of like, oh, this is a little frustrating. I do like it, but it's almost a little bit too loud for me. And then I listened to her, and firstly, I was blown away with how dynamic she is in terms of how high she can get on her clean vocals and how beautiful they can sound, but also how deep she can get and how low she can get with her growls and her screams. But she almost does it in a way where you can actually understand what's being said, and I really appreciated that. And it kind of opened my eyes and opened my mind to listening to some different kind of music like this. And I'm really glad it did, because I truly appreciate so much different subgenres in metal now. Yeah, she deserves massive credit for getting me into that. So with that being said, enough about me and whatnot with that. Let's go ahead and get into this album. So we start off with the opening track, which is Tantrum. We immediately get into it with a blast beat on the drums and into the harsh vocals with Tati. I have so much respect for drummers, especially those that are so quick with the bass drum. I genuinely I was a runner in high school and did a cross country, and I don't do it as much now, but like you have to have such strong legs to not completely just die out there, especially when it comes to this kind of music. So Vlad Ulasevich is incredible with that for sure. Getting into a little bit of what the song might be about. She talks about aristocracy and petty bourgeoisie. His Majesty speaks in agony as I show my motion, my rules are mine. Essentially, I don't adhere to those with power, and I'm going to do my own thing, fighting back against authority and expressing a level of individual freedom. Personal freedom is even mentioned later in the song. And I'll also say, I know that there are plenty of songs that they do this for, such as I Speak Astronomy, for example, but the bridge here and how it slows down and gets softer and more mellow is such an effortless, beautiful shift. Tati's cleans are some of the best in all of metal, and it's crazy to think that when she's more known for her screams and her gutturals. And that's something that the whole band has such a great lock on as well. I think this is a great opening track. It's lively and vigorous while also being groovy. From there, we move on to a hedonist. First thing I notice with this is just how heavy the bass is on this. Again, as I've mentioned before, I'm not a musician, so I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what Eugene is doing here. But I imagine it's some kind of drop tuning. Whatever it is, it sounds great. You can really hear the rumble in it at the start here with that bass. This is another one that's groovy yet again, yet grungy at the same time. We have clean vocals from Tati, and then it shifts at deprivation in exchange for immortality. So I'm not gonna lie here, but when she mentions, "But I am far from standing next to Desaad," I had to look up who Desaad was, and he was an 18th century French writer whose writings helped give rise to the term sadism, which is essentially getting pleasure from the pain and suffering from others. The term pleasure is mentioned various times in this song. I get the sense here this is about pleasure and using it in life as a distraction from the inevitable, which is death. But at the same time, it's important to maximize our enjoyment on this earth. As she mentions in the song, it's a natural human right. Now, the funny thing is, after I wrote this, I was thinking, I took a couple of college courses in philosophy, and I'm sure this is something that was brought up because hedonism is a philosophical term. And I probably spent 3 times that I needed on this song breaking down and dissecting it, as that I think the definition with pleasure and everything kind of goes along with the name of the song. But oh well, regardless, another really good track here to get the album rolling. From there, we move on to Rogue. A lot of aggression here as well. Big part of the song here, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed is a king, and then each despicable decision activates his dreadful knights. Take a listen, their mouths are fully loaded with his words, no thought of their own arose. Just kind of get from that alone, wartime vibes, dictatorial vibes maybe, how in war, a lot of people blindly trust their leaders and what they say or do what they say. Propaganda obviously playing a role here too, and that could be earlier in the song when she says the ugly rotten seeds. We also get themes of poverty with their bread tastes like rock as I'm drinking all the sewage of the damage they call help. These lyrics also just make me kind of made me think about poverty and people being forced to survive with inadequate food, water, or assistance. Whether that's exactly what Jinjer intended or whether it's meant more broadly as a criticism of just neglect and exploitation of people, that's kind of where my mind immediately went. But with the song, you just get this relentless, consistent force, and the gutturals continue all the way through, along with the heavy riffs. Definitely one of the more heavier songs on the album, and that's why I also say, the song is just super aggressive. The last thing I'll say is, with everything that has happened with the war between Ukraine and Russia, you also wonder how much this has to do with that. I believe the band is from the Donbass region, I believe it's called, which is where a lot of the conflict has been happening, and I know that Tatiana has not been able to go back home ever since really things have started there in 2022. So I wouldn't be surprised if this plays a role in that. I know other songs such as Home Back have obviously been about, war and conflict over in that area too. So a really good song here though as well. From there, we go on to Tumbleweed. We definitely slow down a bit here for the first time, almost kind of an opposite from Rogue. The interesting thing is it still feels like we're talking about war here, though. As she mentions, have you heard of the storm that uprooted my home? A shower crushed down on my beautiful town. Get a sense that could be, drone strikes or bombs and whatnot. And I think that this just reflects, pure sadness of seeing parts of her country destroyed. So, to me, this, along with songs like Home Back, are anthems for anybody displaced by war or conflict. We do get more harsh vocals, starting with I Turned Into Nothing in the middle of the song, but the slower pace of the song in general just continues throughout. So definitely an interesting change here for sure. And from there, we move on to track number 5, which is a top 5, maybe top 3 Jinjer song of mine now already, and it's Green Serpent. I heard this live, and was blown away. It's so beautiful. It's just incredible. I mean, the groove and the light start with a perfect transition into the heavier instrumentals and vocals, then back to super slow and light at the end again. I mean, this is a masterpiece. Super dynamic. And I've talked about before on this podcast when it came to reviewing Dear God from the Pretty Reckless, overcoming addiction and the themes of that. I think we get that again here a little bit too. And I looked it up because immediately, I there's a lot of relations to alcohol here, talking about the bottle and talk many things about addiction. So I was wondering, how this relates to Tati, and I saw that she's been sober now for over 3.5 years. I think that's great. That deserves massive congratulations. Big part of the song, though, that made me realize this, it's not him who drinks from the bottle, it's the bottle that drinks from him. Essentially alcohol consuming someone's life, rather they in where they feel it's a necessity in certain settings. I love the chorus on this song here as well. It's again mind-blowing how high and harmonic her clean voice can get, and we see that in the chorus with "Here It Comes the Green Serpent." There's almost a twang to it as well, and it really just cuts through and shines through the instrumentals in the background. Again, it just mesmerizes me how good and controlled her voice can be. Then immediately after that, we get right back into harsh vocals before everything almost abruptly stops. We get the beautiful guitars and her clean vocals at the end, with the grapes are falling down. So really, really good song here. If I were introducing someone to Jinjer for the first time, this is probably the song I'd play. I know Pisces is the song that introduced a lot of people to the band, and for good reason, but it's actually not even one of my top 5 favorite Jinjer songs. More importantly, I think Pisces can actually be a bit overwhelming for someone who's brand new to the band because of just the dramatic contrast between Tatiana's beautiful cleans and those monstrous gutturals in the song. And that's part of what makes that song so iconic, and I think that has to do with what the song's about. But I actually think Green Serpent gives a more balanced representation of what Jinjer is as a band. You get the heaviness, the groove, the incredible instrumentals, and then both sides of Tatiana's vocal ability, but it's almost presented in a way that feels more consistent throughout the song. So if someone told me they wanted to understand what Jinjer's all about, this is probably where I'd start. It doesn't need to be stated this is a 12 out of 10 song. I would give it more than a 10 if I possibly could. From there, we go on to Kafka. And I will say, I know this is a song that a lot of people liked. I actually wasn't as big of a fan of this one. It wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. I did really like the last minute or so of this piece. It's another slow builder. The build up with the drums is great, especially. We do finally pick up and get more aggressive when she says, "The void will bleed das nix." I believe that's how you pronounce it in German. So that was, since that's important, I had to translate it. It basically means nothingness. So it's kind of interesting. The void will bleed nothing or nothingness. So we referenced one writer earlier in Desaad. I believe that was back in, if I'm not mistaken, was it Hedonist? Yeah, so that goes back to Hedonist. And then again, we get it here with Kafka. It's a 20th century writer, Franz Kafka. I'm going to shout out, actually, she's with the band here. I know I've done that before. Tori Kravitz does a phenomenal job over on that podcast, presented by Knotfest. You should really go check that out. And I went back and I actually listened to Tati's interview on there. She mentioned that she reads philosophy, and it inspired her for certain songs and certain writings on this album. I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly what Kafka wrote, but I get the sense it's pretty dark. As in the song, Tati says, quote, "I showed my bare face. It was ripped off like a mask, and they strapped down a throat of my own song. Unmasking comes in price. All that pure is compromised." I'm just getting, criticism or scrutiny from this, maybe feeling kind of like an outsider to the rest of society. That's my best guess here. And again, I think that the reason maybe it wasn't exactly my cup of tea, just instrumentally, musically, is, the expectations I maybe had after coming off of what I heard from Green Serpent. But still, it's definitely an interesting piece. We obviously get some more philosophy talked about here in this song. From there, we go on to Dark Bile, and this almost just feels angry, but also sad as well at the start. I think that's kind of the point, because this feels like it's just talking about kind of sadness and depression. We get Madame Melancholy, My Beauty in Blue, in the School of Moods, I've Mastered Sadness. Again, a really solid groove here, definitely a really creative way to kind of talk about sadness and depression. So another solid track on the album here for sure. From there, we move on to Fast Draw. I will say that this album is very different, and that we almost every song, it feels like we have different pacing. And again, with this one, we're upbeat right away, and it's super intense. You can really hear the bass drums in this. I'm getting a really tense psychological battle almost going on here with this song. We can go back to Green Serpent and talk about how alcohol use or abuse, make a comparison here in just addiction in general or bad habits, and how people know they're doing something bad but still do it. There's a part of the song that states, "I find myself digging deeper, further down the hole. I'll one day come to know." I do like how the pacing slows down again towards the end, and how the heavy riffs are still throughout in the ending sequence. But overall, with the meaning of it, it's just I feel like a really psychological battle going on in one's mind as they deal with addiction. From there, we go on to Someone's Daughter. I'll start by saying, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this was the first single that was released, and that was back in like early 2024. And I knew when I heard that song that this was going to be a great album. I love the bass here, and again, love Tati's vocal range. I'm getting from this is almost just an anthem about being a woman in a male-dominated world, especially in the final couple of verses in the song. She states, "I have the audacity to throw the first punch. I am no longer a daughter." I kind of view that as being young and vulnerable, and now she's saying basically, "I'm strong and I can stand up for myself." That doesn't necessarily mean being violent. It's just showing strength and being fearless in kind of terms of taking on the world. Absolutely love this song. Definitely my second favorite on the album so far, behind Green Serpent. One other note, again, brilliant instrumentally. But before that final verse, we just get a great buildup of tension. It's almost chaotic as well. So, really, really good, really well done. Love Someone's Daughter. From there, we get to the last two albums on the record. Starting off with A Tongue So Fly. Even right away, we get those punchy riffs on this one. Admittedly, again, this one isn't necessarily one of my favorites on the album. But just talking about what this could mean a little bit from the lyrics, I just get the sense it's about someone telling lies about others, gossip, if you will. She states, "They entertain a thought irrelevant. In triumphant tone, they scream their slander. Let the whispers fade. Let the truth prevail." So I think just kind of about, someone, gossiping about others and whatnot, and, how that can maybe hurt others. But, yeah, not one of my favorites on the album, but still, a solid track here as we get towards the end. That leads us to our final track of the album, which is the title track, Duel. I know I've mentioned chaotic before on this album, and we get that again with the drum fills to start this last song. I don't know what I've liked more on this album, the bass or the drums, but Vlad and Eugene are both killing it. And that's no disrespect to, the guitars as well. Roman does a great job, but everything is great. It's just that the drums and the bass has really been the heroes on this album for me. We get a very similar feeling to Fast Draw, and that and a lot of the album, honestly, which just another inner battle between oneself and trying to overcome personal demons. But this is a great song. Definitely another one of my favorites on the album. So, my overall thoughts on this, I thought that there were some really great songs on here and there. My top three are definitely Green Serpent, Someone's Daughter, and Duel. It's funny because, as I mentioned earlier, I could barely stand the harsher vocals with metal until like 3 or 4 years ago. But with this band, it's actually what I like the most. When they get into like their softer stuff, I don't want to say it bores me, but it almost like, I'm not as into it for sure, because I'm so used to, expecting the other stuff from them. I can respect the shifts, especially in the songs, and those are actually some of the songs I like the most, is when we have those subtle shifts that aren't, completely opposite of one another, kind of like, Green Serpent. But one thing I'll say this is what continues to separate this band from so many other metalcore bands is that they never sacrifice their groove for heaviness. They can hit you with crushing riffs, brutal gutturals one moment, and then lock into those incredibly infectious grooves the next. I mean, it's so natural for them. That's one of the many things that keeps me coming back to this band. I don't know exactly where I would rank this for all their albums, because I do like a lot of their works, but this is definitely a top 3 album of theirs for me. I'm going to go 8.25 out of 10. Some really great themes throughout. Tati continues to be one of the biggest badasses in metal, and she showcases it here too. And of course, this also reminded me just how incredible the rhythm section is. Eugene's bass, Vlad's drumming, outstanding throughout. Roman's riffs tie everything together. So definitely an album I would recommend, and especially those 3 songs, Green Serpent, Someone's Daughter, and Duel, really solid on the album too. So, That's going to do it for our album review for the week for Duel. But before we go, I want to talk about another band, and we're going to get into our band of the week. And this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about I Set to Kill. They're a metalcore band out of Tempe, Arizona. Started all the way back in 2003. Consists of vocalist and lead guitarist Alexia Rodriguez. She also does keyboards and piano. Bassist Anissa Rodriguez. Drummer Caleb Clifton. And then rhythm guitarist Jeremy Anderson. He also does some of the harsher vocals now as well. They've got 154,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, just under 72,000 on YouTube Music. They have 6 albums, including Reach in 2008. What's funny is I look at that album cover, it actually reminds me a lot and looks very similar to Collide with the Sky by Pierce the Veil. We have The World Outside in 2009, Broken Frames in 2010, White Lotus in 2011. I will say, it's funny as I was going through and I was looking at that, I feel like it's so rare to see nowadays, or even 15 years ago, a new album from a band each year as touring is so taxing. And typically nowadays, at least, you see a lot of singles released over a period of time before a new album comes out. But they were doing an album every single year. And then from there, they released Masks in 2013, and then self-titled I Set to Kill in 2018. Ever since then, they've released various singles. I got a chance to see them when they were on tour with Deadlands and Vana. They will actually be at Aftershock on Friday, October 2nd this year. Probably won't be able to make it out that day, but we'll see if anything changes on that front. Talking about just them and their music a little bit. Alexia's cleans are actually I'd really compare them, and I think they're comparable to Lacey Sturm of Flyleaf. The dynamic of her cleans with at least early on, Brandon Anderson, who was doing more of the harsh vocals. I can actually maybe draw some similarities there between them and Lacuna Coil. So yeah, they have some really solid stuff. Their most popular song is Darling off their first album, Reach. Most underrated song, I have a couple. Firstly, Sketch in Black and White. Absolutely love the layering of the harsher vocals. The guitars are super tight, and also the cleans of Alexia. But I'd also have to say Infected, as we get, and I know that is still one that they play at a lot of their shows, but it's still, I think, compared to some of their other songs, still a little underrated. We get slightly harsher vocals from Alexia here, where you can notice some rasp and get a good idea of how talented and dynamic she is with the mic. I also love some of the harsher riffs on this, and the drums are heavier too. Both really good songs. As I continue to do these, though, I want to get your guys' thought. What's one band that you think deserves way more recognition and attention? Let me know in the comments, because I'd love to feature some of your suggestions in future Band of the Week segments that I do on this podcast. And with that being said, first off, I just want to start by saying, thank you to everyone who's been tuning in. I know we've had some new subscribers recently, and I really do appreciate the support. I mentioned it at the start of the podcast, but just a couple quick updates before we wrap up. Firstly, I'll be launching a Valkyrie Sessions TikTok account later this week, where I'll be posting shorts and some additional content. So if you're on TikTok, make sure to check that out. Go follow that over there. I'll likely be linking to that and posting that on my Instagram account too. And speaking with my Instagram account, on the Valkyrie Fest Instagram account, again, you can go follow that at Valkyrie Fest. I'll be posting a brand new top 10 blind ranking of clean rock and metal vocalists this week, so keep an eye out for that as well. And then lastly, just a heads up about next week's episode. It is going to be a little shorter than usual, probably closer to around 30 minutes or so. I'm going to be celebrating my dad's birthday, getting everything organized for work this fall. And then I'll also be heading down to the Bay Area next Wednesday for the Pretty Reckless and AC/DC concert. So I'm looking forward to that. So there will definitely still be an episode next week. I just wanted to let everyone know what to expect, that it will be a little bit shorter. And of course, then in episode 7, I'll have a full recap of that concert, talking about, how the Pretty Reckless sounded live. It'll be my first time hearing them live. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you all as well. But with that being said, until then, I've been Aaron Jackson with Valkyrie Sessions. I hope you all keep rocking out there. Have a wonderful week. And until next time, peace out.